Okay, today we are talking about inspection form and the responses.
Got it.
Okay, so let's share the screen. There we are. Okay. So our inspection form number is 35. 35 is our contingency that our buyer gets to have if they want to buy the property. Is their time to do their due diligence, right? Making sure that they want the home based on what their inspector sees. Many times a seller will offer to show you the inspection they had before they listed the property. Many times a buyer will have an inspection prior to making an offer. Every inspector will come with a different outcome. Many times do I hear from buyers after closing, well, the seller didn't tell me this. Well, the seller's inspector didn't find that. You didn't have an inspection to determine if that was something that was important to you, okay? Prior. Remember, you can always utilize the manual on the right-hand side, form 35 right there. You can also find the forms here. Please do not fill the form out though in Express Forms and then upload it. Do it in Transaction Desk. It's a more powerful tool. I can see it. I can go in and fix things for you and you don't have to do a bunch of double work, okay? But for training purposes, I'm going to show it to you through here. Now, Form 35 is a form where I start talking about this specific form in my buyer consultation because I want my buyer to understand when I tell them about my disclosure packet, all 5 million pages of it, 1,500. One of those documents, well, two of those documents, one talks about inspections and why it's important for a buyer, and two, I am supplying them, which is a state requirement of me giving them names of inspectors I use and what is my relationship with them. That's Form 41D. And when I talk about that form, and I'll say to buyer, hey, buyer, do you have an inspector? If not, here's 3 that you can call and interview. You call whoever you want. It is your job, though, to interview and pick the inspector you want. Many times have we been sued because we picked the inspector and scheduled the appointments and got ourselves into trouble. So this states, number 1, that is contingent upon the buyer's subjective satisfaction. They don't even have to have an inspection. But if they have a contingency, right here, if they have a contingency, they have an option of having an inspection or not. It is subjective satisfaction with inspections of the property and the improvements, meaning the houses, any structure that's built. An improvement is something that's built on the property. Buyer's inspection may include, at buyer's option and without limitation, structural, mechanical, general condition of the improvement, compliance with building and zone codes, inspection of the property for hazardous materials or pests, soil stability inspection. There's general home inspection must be performed by the buyer or the person that qualifies under the RCW, meaning they are a licensed inspector in the state of Washington. What? Not their uncle, not their dog, not their cat, not brother Joe. It has to be. Now, if the person is licensed, then they can perform it. I.e., Marianne Christian in our office, her husband is a licensed contractor or licensed inspector and can perform those. So on her Form 41D, when she puts her husband's name, Ken's name, it'll say married because they're married. So the buyer may engage in any specialists, plumbers, electricians, roofers, etc., conduct further inspections of the property. So whatever their time period is, they can have this many people come out during that time period. The one person that has to be there to do the inspection, though, is a licensed inspector. Contractors are not licensed. They're registered in the state of Washington. Buyer's inspection may or may not include an inspection of the sewer system, which may include a sewer line, and assessment may require the inspector to remove the toilets or other fixtures. If you do not check a box, the default is it will be available for the buyer to have it done. If you check the box may not, then it takes away their right. But the default is they have the right to have a sewer scope as well. Do people do sewer scopes? Well, 100%. Ballard, oh, Crown Hill, all the old Seattle big trees, lines through the sewers? Yes. A lot of sewer scopes out there. So a question in the room was, do people actually have sewer scopes? And then yes, there was answers of, oh, yes, there is. Especially some of the older neighborhoods, big trees, vines roots running through. Yes, it does happen more than you think.
I have a question. Like,
yes.
When we have multiple offer situation, we generally waive all these things.
Right.
What's the implication?
So so the question was, if we're in a multiple offer situation, a lot of these contingencies are waived. And what's the implication? That is the onus of the buyer for not doing their due diligence. They have an option generally to have an inspection prior to making an offer and making sure that they want to take on whatever issues there are. That would be their biggest safety net. But a lot of times, I think I saw someone with a hand up. Let me chat here really quick. Do buyers pay for the report? Yes, buyers have to pay for the sewer scope and the report. Yes. They're paying for the process, is what they're paying for, and it comes with a report.
So if they waive these inspections, if they know that we can guide the buyer to do some of these things.
If they make an offer and waive this contingency, what does the buyer get to do? Buyer does not get the right to do any of this if they waive it.
But they can do after they buy the house.
After they've closed, they can't do it before closing. It'll have to be after. This is why it's very important. And when you've got a buyer that's making 8 offers because they haven't won, they're tired of paying $500 to $800 per inspection. So that's why a lot of buyers will say, well, isn't there a seller inspection report that was done? I don't instruct my sellers to do it. If my seller wants to do one, that's up to them. I do not instruct them to, and I don't instruct them in either direction. But I do let them know that if you have an inspection of your property, seller, then you will know too much information and you may have some big repairs to make. So you need to decide, seller, if you want to take that on or not. Yep. So that's why then if the seller does an inspection report, I attach it to Form 17 so they don't have to change Form 17 and I upload it to supplements. It's part of their disclosures. All inspections are to be ordered by the buyer, performed by inspectors of the buyer's choice, and completed at buyer's expense. So when I'm talking in the consultation about the people I'm referring for them to interview to see if they want to use one of them, I will also say, when the time comes and we reach mutual acceptance, you're going to call the inspector you chose. You're going to 3-way call me in. We're going to get out our calendars and we're going to schedule it together. I'm not making the phone call for you.
Give me one question.
Yes.
So when you agree for these documents, and something happens, right? In between, like you made an offer.
You made an offer.
And now maybe the pipes broke down.
Maybe the pipes broke before closing. That is seller's responsibility. Anything that happens between mutual and closing and they were working, many times a buyer will come and say, I closed and the dishwasher doesn't work. And I'm like, did you have an inspection? No. So you didn't know if it was working at mutual inspection or not. But the boilerplate of the contract itself, the purchase and sale agreement, states that the seller has to repair anything that breaks or has issues like that.
And the other question is, you said with Form 17, you have to attach the inspection.
The seller has to disclose what they know. That's the easiest way to do it. They know about it.
So they generally sometimes send it before you make an offer, right?
So many people withhold the report because the listing broker wants us as buyer brokers to ask for it to gauge the level of interest. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, anytime I represent a buyer and you tell me there's a seller inspection report, I'm going to request it before I even show the house. So why hold it? You don't know if my client wants it. I may not even show the house. But if it's something they're interested in, I may send that to them and you holding it back may blow up the deal. Let's see here. Buyer shall not alter the property or any improvements on the property without first obtaining seller's permission. Buyer is solely responsible for interviewing and selecting all inspectors. Buyer shall restore the property and all improvements to the property to the same condition prior to the inspection. Buyer shall be responsible for damages that result from the inspection on buyer's behalf. i.e., an example of this could be if you're doing a lead-based paint, who knows what they're gonna have to do to find lead-based paint and give a proper report. If they're scraping a popcorn ceiling to see if there's asbestos in it. If they have to remove the toilet and something happens during a sewer scope, all buyer's responsibility, any damage. So if the buyer has X number of days, the contingency shall be deemed waived or satisfied if they don't do anything within their time period. The time period that the default is 10 days, which are calendar days, but you cannot end on a weekend or holiday. So if your 10 days hits Saturday or Sunday or a holiday, it goes to the next business day to be the end of it. This is the time for the buyer to have any and all of their inspectors or people to come through. You receive a copy of the report along with the buyer, and you sit down with the buyer either via phone, Zoom, in person to go over what the buyer wants to ask the seller to either fix, replace, or do we want to do a price reduction, or do we want to ask for closing costs? All of that has to be done within these 10 days unless the period is shortened. I typically do 5 days.
What's the recommended option for a buyer?
What do you mean?
Let's say that the buyer finds 10 things.
Okay.
So what would be the recommended option?
Question in the room is, what if the buyer, there's 10 things that they want the seller to remedy? It is really going to be up to the buyer. Sometimes you've got to worry about timing, especially a lot of times roofs come up, repair it, replace it. In the weather we've been typically having, that's not so easy. They could ask for a credit, which I would prefer, because then the buyer can do whatever they want after closing. But sometimes they are maxed out of their credits because they ask the seller for closing costs in their financing contingency. And if they max that out, then that's off the table.
What is bank, 5%?
No, the lender's gonna have to tell you.
Oh,
It's anywhere from 3 to 6%. The other option, which I don't find very viable, is a price reduction, because a price reduction is not going to adjust their payment drastically for a $10,000, $20,000 repair. It also won't give them the cash to fix it. So that's why I like the closing costs idea. If we want the person to fix it, because that's our only option, again, timing can be an issue. I have language that I use that addresses very specific questions. Who, why, what, where, when, how. Because if I can't answer those questions based on the request, I don't know what the buyer is going to get. And if it is something specific, and I will show you today what some of my responses look like, I want the buyer to pick the contractor or the vendor, whoever's going to do the repair. I want that person to give them a bid. I'm going to take the bid from the buyer and attach it to the buyer's request. And it's going to say that the seller agrees to do the bid job based on the attached bid with the exact contractor on the bid. If it's not done X number of days prior to closing, this deal will terminate and the earnest money will be refunded to the buyer. And I make that specific because there's nowhere on here that says if the seller doesn't do it, that the buyer doesn't have to close. Buyer can sue the seller for not performing, but we don't know how long that's going to take, do we? And your money's gone and everything's tied up and we don't know what's going to happen. Once it closes, we are out of the picture. We can't help them. That is going to be an attorney that's next in line to figure out how to remedy the problem that the seller didn't do their job. I'll give you the language. So it shall be conclusively satisfied, and the seller shall not be obligated to make any repairs or modifications unless within X number of days after mutual acceptance of the agreement, the buyer disapproves. We're going to look at that. The buyer will conduct additional inspections. We'll talk about that. Propose repairs from the seller or a modification of this agreement, closing costs, price. If buyer disapproves the inspection and terminates the agreement, the earnest money will be refunded. If buyer proposes repairs or modifications, including adjustments to the purchase price or credits for repairs, the parties shall negotiate as set forth paragraph 6 below. The parties may use Form 35R to give notice required of this addendum.
But it says to be performed after closing, that we,
No,
if buyer.
I see a hand up. Go ahead. You can unmute yourself.
Hello. Just a quick question. This probably sound like a silly question. So I know they have 10 days for this report. Do the sellers have 10 days to remedy the repairs? Or just 10 days, like how long do the sellers have to fix any repairs that come up?
We're gonna get to that. That's in a lower paragraph. Good
Okay.
question.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. What were you reading, Kristen?
It says right, if buyer proposes repairs to the property or modifications, including adjustments to the purchase price or credits, should be for repairs to be performed after closing.
So credits meaning
But-
credit that they're giving you for use.
Oh, so you can
intended
do
to
it
be used
yourself,
to-
okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
she was
okay.
reading, why does it say the buyer will do it after closing it? Because the buyer's gonna get money from the seller to do the
do it
repairs
after
after closing. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. Good question.
It's fine.
It's important you know these things, because if you even misinterpret it, that could, I had a broker in here. They had 10 days as the number. They did not change it. And she comes to me, this was, gosh, good 7-8 years ago. She comes to me and she says, the seller says I waived my inspection contingency. I said, well, did you ask for the request timely? She's like, yes. I said, okay, so what's the problem? She's like, I don't know. I don't understand. So I called the DB and I said, hey, can we figure this out? She thought the 10 days was simply to have the inspection done. Then she'd have as much time as she wanted to ask for repairs. Don't do that. Everything has to be done within this window.
Right.
Okay, if it's 6 days, if it's 5 days or less, it's business days only, so you don't count the weekends or holidays in your counting whatsoever. If you're going to leave the default of 10, fill in the number.
Why do you pick 5? You
Why
said
do I pick
love
5?
Why is that the logic?
So if you're gonna stay with 10 though, be sure to fill that in so it's clear how many days that the buyer's requesting. I like 5 days because you have generally a 30-day window to close. And if I have 10 days and then we do additional inspections, which we're gonna talk about, and then I have 5 more days, now we're at 15 days, we're halfway to closing. So I do this strategically. It is not difficult for you to get an inspection done in 5 days. And the reason we're going to have additional inspections is what I'm going to talk about that gives you another 5 additional days.
Got it. And I remember you saying that a long time ago, but I wasn't ready.
No worries.
I wasn't ready to.
This paragraph 4 is a doozy.
Okay.
Buyer shall not provide the inspection report, photos, or anything to the listing broker or seller. If you do, buyer or buyer broker, you have waived your buyer's inspection contingency and they will get nothing. Do not supply anything unless one of these boxes on 4B is checked, and then you can supply part of it, a little bit more of it, or all of it. It depends what's requested, what's checked. If the seller serves you with a Form 35C for consent to release a portion of the inspection or all of it. If you're in the coaching program and your coach is the listing broker, go to somebody else for help. Do not ask them for help and send photos, because your buyer, if they don't want to close, will lose their earnest money of $25,000 in my particular scenario. It happened. Some of my examples are true.
Yeah.
So it was both listing broker, buyer broker in the Kirkland firm, buyer broker getting help from their coach in the coaching program, sent over photos, which then he's like, doesn't this waive? I said, you have to do what's in the best interest of your seller. The buyer was asking for it was a laundry list. It probably would have equaled up to about $150,000 worth of repairs. Seller was like, you know what? I'm not going to be that person. I'll give you $18,000. Buyer said no. Buyer did not close. Buyer lost all of their earnest money. Neither of those brokers are currently in the firm today. One of them left the business. One of them moved someplace else.
We're not doing
Mm-mm.
that. The 3 of us are.
When in doubt, you ask me first. And I do. And it's sometimes in capital letters. No. Now, let's say the report comes back and the inspector says in the report, again, this has to be true. The inspector has to say, I recommend additional inspections of X, roofing, windows, siding, front door, whatever it is, electrical. If the inspector doesn't have that in the report, you cannot utilize paragraph 5. You cannot have your additional inspections.
It has been the inspection.
It has to be in the inspection report.
I have one question.
Yes.
On 4B,
On 4B,
please check.
you don't, as a buyer broker, unless you want to sneak it in. Seller is not going to check any of those. Most sellers do not want this information because once they have this information, if we don't close, then it has to be disclosed to the next party.
I think you told me. So we do not touch 4.
No, you do not touch for it. If you, buyer, find the issues in your inspection, you cannot have the seller, you cannot ask the seller to amend Form 17 because I found the issues as the buyer. The next buyer, the seller is going to have to disclose any issues if I don't close based on what information I gave them. If they got any part of the report or all of it, they're
Like
going to,
mold.
what?
Like mold.
Yes. Yes, like mold. So one of the questions, and I'll show you 35C, is if the seller can request the portion where it says at paragraph 5, so that's this box here, that's also on Form 35C, consent to receive the information. Do not ever let a listing broker say, oh, my text message is good enough, you'll send me this. No, you have to know that the seller is not sending that text message, right? The seller is the one that has to request it, not the listing broker. We do it on behalf of the seller, but we want consent from the seller.
So that email comes straight from the seller.
It's going to be a form called 35C. You will not do anything unless you get a signed copy of that. That is my policy.
Seller. The
Mhm.
selling person, not their broker.
Correct. And I'll show you that form. So if we're going along, let's say we did have our additional inspection and now we're ready for a request. When I first notify the seller, we are using our right to have the additional inspections and whatever number that is here. We notified them on Form 35R. Let's actually go look at some of these really quick. Let's look at 35C really quick before I go on. So here's 35C. This is what you must have from the seller in order to give them what they're requesting. The seller requests the buyer provide the inspection report. The seller requests the buyer provide only portions of the inspection. Now, an inspection is going to be at least 10 pages long, if not bigger. They're going to ask for certain pieces. You either figure out how to redact all that information, or you take your camera phone, you take photos, and you shrink out what you don't need. Do not overgive anything. Don't forget this last little piece that's not requested. Make sure that it's completely redacted. And if there's ever question, call me and send me things and I'll tell you if you did it right, okay? I know how to redact documents. You can also print it out and you can strike through it and you can run it through the copier. I mean, there's many things you can do to redact documents. If you do not receive this, you send absolutely nothing requested by the listing broker of the report. No pictures, no nothing.
This is like an amendment. to 4.
This is a request or a notice from the seller, send me X. And sometimes the seller does that because they want to make sure that the buyer's being truthful, i.e. seller requests buyer provide a copy of the inspector's recommendation for the additional inspection. If you do use that and this box is checked and they send it, you have to give it, but you're only giving that part, which I do talk to my inspectors and I'm like, you know what would be really helpful? If you're going to recommend additional inspections of something, can you have a whole separate page that has nothing but that on it? So then we're done,
That's another.
right? There's no, if I redact so much, there's going to be no address on that report. There's going to be no names on that report of who the buyer, how does the seller even know? How do they know I didn't grab it from a report 4 years ago? Of course, I don't have reports from 4 years ago, but if I did. So do not send unless you receive this. If you are doing your additional inspection time period, which is the buyer's right, the seller can't say, no, you can't. The seller signed the purchase sale agreement with this contingency in it. They've already signed it. It's already solidified. The buyer can have it if the inspector recommends it, right? You're going to send over Form 35R and you are going to check the box that says buyer gives notice of additional inspections if requested by seller. The inspector's recommendation is attached. The time for buyer's response is extended as provided for paragraph 5. So if for some reason the seller does come back in a counter offer and they check this box because they say, if you're going to ask, if you're going to use it, I want to see it. When you send over 35R and this box is checked, you will send over that portion of the inspection report through 30. No, if they check it here, their seller's already consenting.
Oh,
Correct.
okay.
Okay,
You got to use the C.
Oh, that's a 35R.
correct.
Sorry, I screwed up, 35R.
Now, once I've done this, this 35R is done. The seller's not gonna sign it. They're not gonna use any of these other boxes. When the buyer's done having the rest of their inspections, you're gonna do a new 35R and you're going to check whatever box is appropriate here,
Next section or this?
this section. So you're gonna have two 35Rs if you're having additional inspections,
Okay, got that. You were going to have two.
okay?
Let's say they found, they want to do additional inspection.
Yep, then you're gonna do this, you're gonna send this. Buyer's gonna have additional inspections. This 35R is done.
So the next one is,
The next one is going to be is approval and we're moving forward. Buyer's inspection is disapproved, we're dying, I'm getting my earnest money back. Or buyer requests the following modifications or repairs.
this is when you write by.
Right. Now, we've had our original inspection, now we've had our additional inspections. What is the buyer asking for? Make up anything, I don't care.
The new roof.
We want a new roof, we want $10,000 and we want mold remediation. So I've got a lot of requests. This box here, very, very tiny. There's something else that I will have you do, especially if we're changing price or asking for a credit. Number one, 35R never has to go to the lender. But if there's a price on it, price change, or there's a request for closing costs, then I do have to give it to the lender. The lender's then gonna give this form that says inspection response to the underwriter. Underwriter's gonna be like, whoa, all of a sudden you're asking for money on an inspection response? What's wrong? I wanna see the report. And now I want it fixed before closing, so no credit.
Yep.
So we do not put money on 35R. What we put on here is see attached form 34. So that's gonna have a different something on it. Now, I may say here, one, and then we've got the second one. Seller to perform mold remediation. And 3, seller to replace the roof. What? It's very nice, seller, but I'm gonna put seller to replace the roof. Okay,
I did that.
okay.
That's fine. If you have an old house, that's what you do. I mean, you have a bucket that's 30 years
What
old.
color is it? Is it is it
Oh.
shake? Is it comp? Is it green? Is it metal? Is it thatch? So seller to replace the roof means a
That's
whole
pretty good.
bucket full of things.
So that's not good.
So that's where you start to get into the who, what, why, where, when, how. So what the buyer's gonna do during the additional inspections is the roofers are gonna come out and the roofers are gonna give you a bid,
That's-
right? And the roofers are going to give you a specific bid based on the buyer's request of that bid. What type? Everything on that bid is gonna be spelled out. So that is what we have to ask the sellers to do as well. Same with mold remediation. Now, I've done mold investigation, or I've been with buyers that have had them performed. And a lot of times the person coming out to do the bid also sends photos. I will attach the bid, but I will never attach photos. I redact the photos. If the seller wants them, they can request them. But a bid is not an inspection. It is a bid to do some work. So if they tell them to do the bid work exactly as written by the exact company that wrote it, which would be attached, that is what the seller is to do. So my language is way different.
Only send.
So do you write it here?
You do write it here, but not here because it's not gonna fit. So that's why see attached 34 would be there, and you might have more than 134 attached.
For each of them?
You might, depending on what you want the lender to see. There's probably not going to be a seller that would agree to all of this. especially based on whatever the price of the home is, right? Now, let me see if I can find you how I do write that. I'm gonna stop sharing for a second. I'm gonna go into here. What was that?
But then you can like the Las Vegas smash burgers.
I love Mustang.
It's not it. Delete that one. By the way, on a side note, I was at Rocket Taco in Whidbey Island this weekend. I had a smash burger taco,
Oh,
the bomb diggity.
Yeah.
The bomb diggity. Used to work for them,
You know, the-
Element Pizza. Did you used to work for them?
I helped create Elemental Pizza.
Ah.
I was there from design on.
Okay, so I can't find it here. So what I'm gonna do really quick, you guys, I'm gonna find my email that has this.
Which is tomorrow. Up close, it's on the top.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's beautiful, and then,
I heard they moved across the street. Yeah, I went to the Whidbey Island one.
and then they.
Oh, okay.
It was awesome.
Okay, so here is, let's go back to sharing so you guys can see it, and I will put it somewhere where you will have it. And I'm going back to, oh, yes.
Super popular.
Okay, perfect. Okay, you can see me now. Great. Okay. Let's go to this one, I think. Here is my language. Nope, that's not it. It's 912. My language, thank you. Turn seller's inspection response. So here was my request. On behalf of the buyer, see attached form 34 and bids. Seller agrees to the following repairs, replacements based on the attached bids and the work to be performed by the contractors listed on the bids. That any and all repairs, fixes, replacements to be completed 10 days prior to closing, and seller agrees to furnish all receipts, warranties, and invoices to buyer upon completion of the work repair. Buyer to re-inspect the property within 1 day of work completion. Should the repairs, fixed replacements not be complete on time, the seller understands and agrees that the buyer may, at buyer's options and written termination of the contract, and earnest money will be refunded to the buyer. 1, attic remediation for mold and proper ventilation. Environix must be used and paid for by the seller. Bid is attached with the scope of work to be required for the repair. I see someone have a hand. I see something. We don't see the form. Okay, let me try again. Share, let's try this one. Can you see it now? Yeah, can now see, perfect. Okay, then there's the crawl space, clean out. The seller shall increase and pay for the buyer's allowable closing costs from $10,000 to a total of $15,500, which shall be applied to buyer's loan and settlement costs, including prepaids and so forth. So see, it was very specific. Who was doing the work? When was it to be done? What is the work? How was it gonna be done based on bids? And then the bids were attached. I took out pictures. And the reason there's giant red marks through it is because the seller said no. We moved on to a different property. This house was a property that was a rental for a long time, so it needed a lot of work. And so those were the attached bids, and that is how I wrote that. So
did they have to disclose all this afterwards?
no,
Because they,
Because we didn't get that.
they didn't, there's no inspection that they know of that says that.
okay, I get it. You're just asking on 30. Yeah.
We're asking for them to do something.
Right, they said no, and so they want, yeah, they don't want to do that.
I mean, if it were me and I got something like this, yes, I would disclose it and I would actually do it.
So
Yeah.
we'll-
The seller ended up, because that was a long list, kind of like what we just talked about. They sent. Where was their response?
This is
Oh. Seller offers to correct only the following conditions described below or on the attached pages. Seller agrees to pay buyer's closing costs up to $15,500. Seller shall do no repairs.
Okay.
It needed work too. So these were the big ticket items only. There's a lot of smalls.
So what would have been the amount for the small?
Oh, there was a ton of stuff. They also need carpet. They needed a bunch of stuff. They needed,
They just wanted.
they
to
need
say-
they needed windows. The seals were broken in some windows that he was gonna do. I mean, the bid alone for, this was the attic request
For-
was 3607. And,
It's not that much.
or is that the crawl space? That's the crawl space. $4,000 for, so.
So basically, it was 9,000 less than, because you requested 15,000 something else.
No,
We,
They did 15 plus those two things.
he was already getting $10,000 based on the inspection, excuse me, the financing contingency, which I said was a max out. The max for him was 15,500. And that is all the seller was willing to do. But it also needed a beam needed to be corrected in the crawl space. It needed stuff. So that was the reason for that, because there's no way we were gonna get the work done timely. There was literally a beam sitting there.
It wasn't.
It wasn't attached to anything.
I get it.
Like it had shifted or something. We don't know, but
So
anyways.
you were asking for the things that could reasonably get
Yep.
done and you were gonna. suck
Correct.
up- Your guy was gonna suck.
So
some in.
buyer was like, okay, this seller is playing a hardball, so I'm gonna say.
When we went to a different house. So we had the additional inspections, we had the contractors come out. We then fall into paragraph 6, which is on page 2,
Insert.
buyer's request for repairs or modifications. So if the buyer requests repairs or modifications pursuant to paragraph 3, the parties shall negotiate. So we did that. We sent our 35R within our 10 days or whatever your time frame is, right? That's based on this page, right? So within this time period, we had an inspection. Within that time period, we sent a notice that we were having our 5 days of additional inspections. So before that 5 days ends, I now have to send the request. I don't send any request until, if we're doing paragraph 5, I wait till all of the inspections are done and then we request.
Okay,
So this includes the bid work also.
Correct.
okay, so it's what you do.
Correct. So then I sent it to the seller. The seller now has their response period. Seller's response to request for repairs or modifications. Seller shall have 3 days unless otherwise specified, business days only. After receipt of the buyer's request for repairs or modifications, give notice that seller agrees to it, agrees to some of it, rejects all of it, or offers a different response or options. So they can agree to all of it. They can say, I'll do only this or that, which you saw with my second one. Or I won't do any of it. Or I will give you a credit instead of doing repairs or vice versa. Okay. There's where a seller might ask for the report so they know what kind of repairs to do. Because if I'm straight up asking for a credit as a buyer, seller's like, well, what are you gonna use the money for? But at the end of the day, seller, I don't think you want to know. So I wouldn't ask for the report. If you want to, well, and some listing brokers will be like, what are we talking about? You know, and I might say, as a buyer broker, I might say, there's issues with the roof, there's crawl space, and some windows. That doesn't mean anything. I haven't done anything. There's nothing in writing. And if someone baits you into a text message or an email, do not answer it. If you want to know more, your seller can ask for it on 35C. They want to do a verbal, just give me an idea of why you're asking for $10,000. Roof, window, siding, whatever it is, right? Don't do any of that in writing. Now, let's say I've sent off this response in my time period. We're now in paragraph 6A, sellers 3 days. Let's say day 3 comes and goes. Seller didn't do anything. They didn't respond. They didn't ask any questions. We automatically fall into our last time period, buyer's last chance, 6B, to get something from the seller. So these 3 days have come and gone. Where'd it go? Where's my mouse? 3 days. Our next 3 days is our last 3 days. Attention buyers, these time periods for negotiating repairs or modifications does not repeat. The parties must either reach a written agreement or a buyer must terminate this agreement by the buyer's reply deadline set forth in 6B.
Basically, if they don't respond, then it's up to the buyer. Terminate the contract, then-
We have, yep, seller or buyer now has 3 more business days until the 9 PM on the last day to get the seller to agree to something. At this point, I start just making phone calls with the listing broker.
See if we're gonna say that.
I don't want to keep writing and sending stuff over. My buyer has to understand, come 9 PM on the third day, which means 8 PM. We're not waiting till 9 in case technology blows up or something happens. Like, we're ready to terminate.
You get your money back when you go on. They're not responding. They're not-
Right.
they're
So
not
I will, a lot of times I will have a 35R signed terminating and have it ready to go in case technology does break.
That's what Sherry's taught me, yeah.
How do you terminate a contract?
Oh, well, there is that response here on this form as well. So if you get to every time a buyer gets a response, they get a right to terminate from the get-go. So this is our last time period. So buyer rejects, seller's response, buyer disapproves, we terminate, earnest money is refunded.
So final time.
Yep.
And this thing, just with the.
With this box done. I've had many times where the buyer does it here. Before even if they haven't had an inspection, the buyer never actually has to have an inspection. So they can terminate if they get cold feet 4 days into it. And I've watched that happen.
Basically, they saw an inspection report and they're like,
No, they didn't see anything. They just got cold feet and they just didn't even order the inspection. They just terminated the deal.
so you can just do that.
Yes. Yes, you can. Just like review of Form 17, nothing has to be wrong with it. Buyer can terminate within 3 days unless they sign lines 2 or 3. Look and walk clause. This here, paragraph 7, does have a repair timeline. They say 3 days. That was the question you were asking online. I do not think that is good enough because I am probably going to have my walkthrough. I had a 5-day window as a buyer to have my walkthrough of the property, not including additional reinspection, which I can have a reinspect of the property with the same inspector to make sure the work was done. But if I also have all the bids paid for and everything's done, I do always put in there, you notice I put in there that we will have a reinspection within 1 day of the bids being done so that we can see that they were done. 10 days to me is a good number. But again, this is why you gotta be very careful with your timeframes because they start to chip away at your closing date, arriving sooner and sooner and sooner. So that's why I have that in there. But I do want to utilize my buyer's 5-day right to have a walkthrough, which is part of the purchase and sale agreement, boilerplate, 5 days prior to closing. Because the microwave was working, the oven was working, the dishwasher was working, and now one of them isn't. And now what do we do?
Walk through. I lost money for it. I
Yeah.
did not walk through it. My agent didn't even tell, it was a brand new agent, my best friend.
Oh.
We messed up, but it cost me.
But
about
when was that?
$4,000. The person Ranch,
But how long ago was that?
probably 14 years.
Yeah, we didn't have that clause back then.
Well, I just asked for a walkthrough I think you should always ask for.
Well,
one.
it's now part of the boilerplate. It
Oh.
wasn't part of the
So
boilerplate
you
back
had to
then.
ask for it.
Yes.
'Cause I said.
Anytime you have access and there's nothing in writing from the seller, you can't just go have access.
So how do you ask for a 5-day walkthrough? I
It's,
just-
it's automatically in the boilerplate of the contract. It's in the contract.
They do something, like you take possession and it's not, and something different has happened.
The seller has to fix it. Condition of the property.
Okay.
Closing in possession. Is this where the 5-day is? Trying to remember where the 5 days is. Offer, counter offer, information. Oh, property here, maybe it's here. I can never remember where it is. I always find it the last minute. Property can,
Something that said
good.
completion of time.
pardon?
There was something that said completion of time a little bit up.
Yeah, there's completion of time. That's computation of time. So that's how we compute
Oh,
our
computation.
days.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Sorry about
No,
that.
no, you're fine. You're all good.
It's okay, I can.
But it's in, yeah, so it's either, there's a 5-day window that our buyers get. It's probably right in here somewhere, but it's 5 days prior to closing. So and 5 business days you count differently when you're counting backwards versus forward. So you could lose a day if you're not careful. But it is the buyer's right to do it, and I highly recommend that you do it.
So I did 5 days before, like, this.
Yep,
Fine.
Yeah.
I did.
but sometimes things break. Wet weather, things leak,
Yeah.
they're gonna have to do something before closing. Any inspection regarding oil tanks or contamination can also be done during this time period. Buyers advised to advise that the on-site sewage, meaning septic system, are subject to strict governmental regulations and occasionally malfunction and even fail. Buyers advised to consider conducting an inspection of an on-site sewer system in addition to the inspection of the property provided in Form 35 by including a Form 22S, the equivalent, which is a septic contingency, which is separate. And then if the buyer so chooses, they can have a neighborhood review, meaning they're going to do their own investigation of schools, proximity to sex offenders, anything of those natures. That is a separate review. And again, buyer does not give disapproval, then it lapses and you move forward. I've not seen box 10 checked in many years.
What's the sewer one?
Septic?
Septic, I mean, sorry. It,
If
but,
we have a sewer on site.
but you have to have a,
You don't have to, but
Oh.
if you don't have a if you don't, but the thing you need to remember about septic contingencies is there are different forms for different counties. So when you
Oh,
are looking, simply type in septic so you can see which ones there are. There's King, there's Manson, there's Skagit, there's Thurston, there's Kitsap, there's Pierce. Okay? What?
Yeah. Income.
It's just different than this addendum. They have different language based on the counties.
Oh,
Isn't Pierce County?
so we pick,
there's like 80 units a day.
no, I get it, but so I'm assuming that you pick one of these.
You
four.
pick one, you based on your county. If you don't see your county here, then you go with the 22S. Yep, yep. And I don't know why they changed them with letters and didn't put the counties to make it super easy, but they didn't. So that is one of the options for inspections for a buyer is a septic inspection. Another inspection would be a well, which is 22R. That has its own inspection time period about quality and quantity of the well. Is it a shared well, community well? How many connections are there? So those are two other ones that the buyer has to do their inspections. There's inspections based on reviewing of Form 17, inspection based on reviewing HOA documentation. But a true inspection is 35. And that is the form. And the responses. So remember, 35C is important and 35R is important and potentially a 34.
Do we have like templates depending on
What do you mean?
what type of house people are buying, like the condo is a package of templates, you know?
No, but that's a really good question. That is something that you can create in Transaction Desk, yes, but no, there's not one created for you. I have created templates for you guys in the past and you tend to use them inside there and then it screws up the templates for everybody else, so I don't do them anymore.
But nice try.
Yeah,
And I think that's enough too. It's extremely valuable to go and see your inspections. And if you get the opportunity, so that their agents who are really busy and have a lot of transactions going on, offering to sit their inspections. Because any chance you could be around an inspector while they're doing their inspections, don't get in their way, obviously, but they're all super friendly and they're all willing to explain things to you.
Yep.
And I'm learning so much about what I can do to look out for some things that could be red flags before even getting to that point.
so in the class, they're talking about how important it is as you as a broker to go with your buyer. Number one, you are required to go unless otherwise written. Some inspectors have key box openers and they can open it, but that has to be in writing that you're not going to be there. Or finding a broker that's extremely busy, they may pay you to go sit the inspections for them, and you learn a lot based on hearing the different inspectors talk and some things to look out for. I always open up the crawl space. I don't go in the crawl space. There's bugs. Attics, I don't open because I don't know where the insulation is going to fall. Most inspectors will carry around a dust buster with them to vacuum up when it does fall through. So there are some things that you need to consider. I never recommend that we go down in the crawl space or up in the attic as a liability and risk for us. If the buyer wants to go up, they need to understand, especially in the attic, they've got to hit certain spots and they better know where they are. They're going to fall through the ceiling and that's going to cause damage and that's going to cause them to have to replace things. So they can easily fall down. Are there any questions online? Did you all get a copy, take a screenshot of my inspection language? I'm happy to put it back on the screen if you need to see it again.
Can you please?
Yes. Okay. There's the language. Just take a screenshot and then I recommend when you see things like these, type it out and then save it on a cloud-based system. That's why I thought maybe I had it in my notes so that I could easily have it quick. And so I will probably add that today, just so I have it for future. But having these types of language is super helpful if you can't quite remember how to ask for things. That is all I have for you guys today. Thank you for attending in class and online. I appreciate all of you. I'm here to help and support you as you need, so please don't ever hesitate to reach out. This will be recorded, so I will have that pulled up and put in the hub. I notice sometimes if I'm not careful, I use certain names or language or show too much. YouTube deletes my content and they won't give it back. So I do hope for this one not to be deleted because I think it's an important one, especially with the language, so that you guys all have it. So enjoy this sunny day
I know.
and I look forward to seeing you guys again soon. Cheers.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Welcome. Bye.
Bye, Kenny.